எல்லாருக்கும் வணக்கம். மீண்டும் என் பாட்காஸ்ட்ல உங்களெல்லாம் வரவேற்கிறேன். வெல்கம் பேக் டு மை பாட்காஸ்ட். டுடே இஸ் லா 18. தம்பி சார், லா 18 படிங்க. வினோத், read law 18.
Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous. The world is dangerous and enemies are everywhere. Everyone has to protect themselves. A fortress seems the safest, but isolation exposes you to more dangers than it protects you from. It cuts you off from valuable information. It makes you conspicuous and an easy target. Better to circulate among people, find allies, mingle. You should shield yourself from enemies by the crowd. Reversal of the law. The only thing constant human contact cannot facilitate is thought. The weight of society's pressure to conform and lack of distance from people can make it impossible to think clearly about what is going on around you. A temporary recourse, isolation can help you gain perspective. சொல்லுங்க ஆனந்த்.
இந்த லா 2-3 நாளைக்கு முன்னாடி நம்ம சொன்ன லாவோட கான்ட்ரடிக்ஷன் மாதிரி இருக்கும். அதாவது ரொம்ப காமனாக அப்பியர் ஆகாதீங்க, அப்பப்போ அப்பியர் ஆகுங்கன்னு ஒரு லா சொன்னேன் நான் ஒரு 3-4 நாளைக்கு முன்னாடி. ஆக்சுவலாக இது கான்ட்ரடிக்ஷன் கிடையாது. எந்த சர்க்கம்ஸ்டான்ஸில் எந்த லாவை அப்ளை பண்ணணும்னு பார்க்கணும். யூ ஹாவ் டு அப்ளை தி லா டிபெண்டிங் ஆன் தி சர்க்கம்ஸ்டான்சஸ். And this is true of all great superstars. And when they stop being superstars, they become a wreck. This happened to Michael Jackson. It was a tragic case because he was not in touch with reality. And when his end of his superstardom, so he created his own ranch and he created his own make-believe world and tried to live in that make-believe world. He adopted children and then it went into a lot of messy things. And it went into medication. People exploited him and he died in his what do you call that? Nevada. He had a wonderful house which he made into a park. And he almost went bankrupt. It took a lot of effort from trustees to revive his fortunes. And he was such a great star. This is because when you get isolated completely, you lose touch with reality. Initially when he started with Jackson's five brothers. And then since he Neverland Ranch. And Jackson's 5 when his father made them an act and made them a big superstars. And then finally, he was the main guy, and his sister Janet Jackson was the main guy. She was more realistic, but excessa ஒரு டாக்டர்கிட்ட நம்பி ஏதோ substance abuse and injection செத்து போயிட்டான். But at the end of the day, it was his isolation from the people, and he couldn't produce a big hit that killed him. There are a lot of other great stars who have managed to live a normal life, be with the people and mingle with the common men. Paul McCartney is a great example. I saw a video when he went to Liverpool and stood next to his statue and asked everybody to come and take a photograph with him. He did not isolate himself, and he didn't think himself to be a demigod, which he was. And long after Beatles, he's remained relevant. And he went to meet Obama, appears in public, gave concerts, collaborated with other people. He never isolated himself. Am I right? You know more about music than me.
No, you're absolutely right. He never isolated. Even actually collaborated with Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson went and stabbed him in the back and stole his catalog bought it from Sony, I think.
Yeah, and then they had to buy it back.
Yeah, go to court, and it was a really messy thing.
It became a mess.
So ruined their friendship, yeah.
And so these are two great superstars. One who tried to live in reality, who tries and is still alive and still is a global icon. And the other is a person at the first whiff of failure. He isolated himself in a lounge and killed himself practically. And Paul has had his own share of failings in the sense that the Beatles pirivu must have been very traumatic, and he must have suffered heavily when Lennon was shot, whatever their differences were. And then his wife died of breast cancer, and he married another lady, and it became a messy fight. And with all this, he kept himself relevant. That is the contrast between two great singers, both of whom I enjoyed a lot, but I don't have the kind of skill sets and knowledge that you have on this. But இது சொன்னோன்னு எனக்கு அது ஞாபகம் வந்தது. The other thing which I தமிழ்ல மாத்தி சொல்றேன், இப்போ இதுல ரொம்ப காமனா இருந்தது ஷாருக் கான் அப்படிதான், always wanting to meet people and every day standing on the balcony waving people. In fact, ஒரு இடத்துல ஷாருக் கான் சொல்லுவான், ஒரு ஸ்ட்ரீட்ல என்ன யாராவது ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ணலன்னா எனக்கு ரொம்ப வீக் ஆயிடும். ஸோ அவன் ஆல் த டைம் mingling with people, and the Night Riders matchல appear ஆவான் பப்ளிக்கா. And the contrast is of course Rajesh Khanna, who could never deal with the fact that அவருக்கு வயசாயிடுச்சு, இனிமே அவரால பெரிய நடிக்க முடியாது. And Rajesh Khanna was the greatest superstar, like I said before. So this is a contrast between Rajesh Khanna and Shahrukh Khan. அங்க between Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney. So yes, at times you have to isolate yourself, you have to give a temporary withdrawal, but like on the reversal சொன்ன மாதிரி, that is for you to think and recollect and give yourself a time to think. But you have to stay in touch with reality, and the reality may be very harsh. It will be completely different from what you and I think is reality. We may understand better, but what the people understand, we should know. You should know the pulse. You should know the pulse of the people. அப்பதான் நீங்க சக்சஸ்ஃபுல்லா இருக்க முடியும். இது you have to be, if you are in the public domain, நீங்க பப்ளிக்கோட மிக்ஸ் பண்ணணும். அதே மாதிரி தான் socially awkward இருக்கிறச்ச people have to work to break that social awkwardness and learn to make friends and mix with people. Otherwise it's extremely difficult. நீங்க ரொம்ப கட்டப்பட்டிருக்கீங்க லைஃப்ல. And especially in the modern era, கமிட்மெண்டே இல்லாம ரொம்ப ஆப்ஷனல், எல்லாமே ஆப்ஷனல் இருந்து you can live. நாங்கெல்லாம் சின்ன வயசுல உனக்கு ஞாபகம் இருக்குல்ல, we had a big colony and we had people playing all the time. இன்னைக்கு அதெல்லாம் இல்லவே இல்லை. உன் குழந்தை எல்லாம் I don't see them playing, interacting with people of their own age. And நம்ம ஸ்ட்ரீட்டே has very few people like your kids, so there is no common meeting ground. So people like you நீங்க you have to make extra effort for these kids to mingle with them. So in the hostel experience becomes very important, at least at a university level, because they simply don't understand how to interact with people. And families have become nuclear, and even becoming nuclear, parents are somewhere, children are somewhere, so there are absolutely no relationships commitment ஒண்ணுத்துக்குமே மரியாதை இல்லாம ஆயிடுது. அதெல்லாமே இந்த லாவோட இதுதான். மக்களோட மக்களா இருந்தாதான் உங்களுக்கு இதெல்லாம் புரியும். காத்தால பீச்சில் வாக் பண்ணீங்கன்னா, I don't walk because of no கரோனாக்கு அப்புறம் I have not resumed it, but I used to have a lot of friends in the beach. So அவன்னா வாக்கிங் ஃப்ரெண்டு, காத்தால வாக்கிங் மொத்தம் அவனை பார்ப்போம், ரைட்டா? So man is a social animal. You have to mix with people. இதுதான் நான் நினைக்கிறேன். Vinod, your turn.
நான் இன்னொன்று எக்ஸாம்பிள் மாரி சொல்கிறேன். இது எப்படின்னா, நம்ம சவுத் இண்டியன் ஹிஸ்ட்ரியில் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, we had 3 major kingdoms. நம்ம சேரா, சோலா, பாண்டியான்னு இருந்தாங்க. And they each were stuck in their own silos, fighting each other all the time over small pieces of territory, and each believing the other was weak and they're the strongest. They all used to be against each other till a common enemy like the Mayuran Empire came around. When the Kalinga Mayura Empire came and Maurya Empire became a threat, these 3 started to band together. Of course, the legend is they went to Parvati and asked Parvati to resolve the dispute of the 3 kingdoms, and Parvati drew the boundary lines between the 3 kingdoms, and that's the legend, mythology or whatever. But basically the story is, they were all living separately in their own fortresses with their own ideology and belief system. But when a common threat came, they gave up those boundaries and fortresses and and they banded together for common survival. So it's thing you can see in life, where people, for once it becomes a question of survival, you let go of these fortresses, you let go of your inhibitions, you let go of all your belief system, because your own life is under threat. Your livelihood is under threat. So that's another example of this law. If you continue to believe in your belief system too strongly, and you cut yourself off from the world and think now நான் நினைக்கிறது தான் வந்து correct way, பாக்கியெல்லாம் வந்து it's false, நீ ரொம்ப you hold on to it. It can be your detrimental, it can be your end of your own life or your way of thinking altogether. So it's something to think differently. என்ன சொல்லுங்க ஆனந்த்?
I think completely I agree with this. This is, you can see, இப்போ வந்து Sivasena joining with Congress and NCP is also one such example.
And another example I can think of is within generations also. This is the famous example which I've always talked about in previous podcasts was about the French kings. When we had Louis XIV. Louis XIV was so paranoid that people were talking about him and all that, where he built the Castle of Versailles. He put himself right in the middle, his bedroom. And both sides of the wings were all his family and his courtiers. And everybody had to come and greet him in the morning. And he constantly injected himself with the people, and he kept the castle very open. And he had spies everywhere, and he knew what was happening in the city, and it was really interactive. And 2 generations later, the Louis XVI came, and he did the exact opposite, where he thought,
and he got
he thought he was a god, where he thought he's above everybody, he's above everything. He cut himself off from the people. The French people were starving. The French people were in very bad situation, and he didn't realize what was happening. Him and his wife Marie-Anne Antoinette were living in some other false reality, and that finally, that living in that kind of a cut-off life cost him not only his life, where his head was cut off, but it was the end of the French royal family. That was the end of it. The revolution happened.
His brother came back, but his brother died childless, and that's how it ended. But Napoleon, from 1789, when this happened, till 1815, the Bourbon dynasty, they lost power for 26 years. And his brother could not re-establish that dynasty. Anyway,
Yes,
great talking to you, boss. Thank you.
Tomorrow we'll catch up with another law.
Wonderful.
And those of you who are fortunate to see Anand in Tanjavur, make sure say hi to him, and you've been listening to
Yes.
this podcast. Thanks, Anand.
Thank
See you tomorrow. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.